This is MATRcast. Real people, conversations that matter. Welcome and enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome again to MATRcast. Today I sit down with my wife, Lauren, and we had a great conversation, ranging from everything from what it really looks like to be a yes person. She's very much a yes person. And we talked about what we call banner phrases, how they could potentially be dangerous to our lives and kind of limiting, and also how we can use them kind of advantageously in molding our lives. And lastly, we kind of delved a little bit into the trappings of identity. It's a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of MATRcast, and this is the first episode where I'm going to be talking with Lauren. It's going to be sort of us chatting about stuff.
And I am your wife.
You are my wife. Yes, I should probably say that. That me and Lauren are married, and we've been married for just about 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think I kind of wanted to do this because we are parents of a 4-year-old daughter. And it can be really difficult to have the kind of conversations that we used to. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like really getting into it deep, either like on a road trip or just really all the time, you know? So I think before we start the conversation though, do you want to maybe set an intention?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to put out there that this exchange, the intention for the exchange is coming from a loving, conscious place, and that this should reach anybody it's meant to, everybody it's meant to.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you. I think there's a lot of things that we talk to throughout the day, and a lot of them end up being, I think, around parenting a lot, and like how in love we are with our daughter and that type of thing. So it's kind of cool. Like I wanted to talk about you a little bit tonight. And before we get into it, this being one of our first podcasts and videos, whether it's with us talking or anybody else, I think it'd be nice to sort of let whoever is out there listening know kind of where we're coming from. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just say about myself really quick that together we are the co-creators of MATR. We hand make ergonomic cushions for sitting and meditation, laying down, all different kinds of things. That's where it started. And we're still continuing to do that. But now we're doing this podcast as part of it as well. Myself, I've had a lot of different jobs. I really am enjoying this one. And I'll just say kind of just where I'm coming from with these podcasts is I think I've explored a lot spiritually and spirituality kind of in the last 15 years or so, probably I would say. And I think where I find myself is very open to all different kinds of beliefs and systems of thought, philosophies, and all that. But I think I find myself kind of feeling more comfortable in like a Zen Buddhist kind of that sort of background. That's where I'm coming from. Of like a lot to do with like presence, meditation. But I don't know. I really for some reason like Buddhist philosophy really resonates with me. I think when we talk, I end up kind of defaulting like from that perspective a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so that's just kind of my simple, like where I'm coming from. How about you?
Well, I would describe myself as being very much a yes person. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in the sense of, I refer to them as neon signs. I've been referring to them as neon signs forever because the neon signs to me are, you're living your life and all of a sudden you hear on the radio somebody talking about something, and then 2 minutes later you hear another person talking about it, and then it comes up again the next day in conversation. To me, those are the neon signs. And when I see those, I feel like I'm always on the lookout for those. And when I see those, I think, oh, okay, well, I guess that's maybe the next part of my adventure. And so what it's led me, the path that it's led me down has been very varied. Anything from, oh my gosh, I've done so many different things as far as work and play in my life. And anything from, massage therapy to, gosh, so many things. Being an RN, I am an RN, but I haven't practiced it since I had my daughter. And now I'm a parent. Never thought I was going to be a parent. And now I'm a parent to our 4-year-old. And I teach kids yoga, and I'm an entrepreneur and a blogger and whatever else comes. So that's I think, kind of a good impression of me
I agree.
as a person.
I agree. And I just want to say, I mean, because we are living in a world where lots of times people want to apply like a label or something like that. I like the yes person because I think just knowing you, that's a very accurate description of how you approach life and that type of thing. I'm curious, and just so other people know, is there any sort of belief system or anything like that that you think really resonates with you at all, or not really?
I've heard you say, I feel like you have labeled my way as being very, I guess, Buddhist, Zen, but I don't. I've always been very yin in that sense. I haven't been the person who's been striving for the answers and the spirituality. I've always been much more sort of back and flowing with, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I actually don't practice a lot of meditation. I feel like what I connect with most is just the presence of things. And sometimes that's meditation, and sometimes that just feels like life yoga, life meditation.
Life yoga, for sure.
But I'm definitely not, I definitely don't adhere to any particular.
Yeah. And I think that, you said that when, like, I would say that maybe you have this sort of a similarity with like Buddhist kind of thinking. And I think that could apply to actually a lot of different like philosophies and belief systems as well. I think it's just kind of a side effect of you being present. Really, I mean, I think I would say, and would it be fair to say that you strive for presence, essentially, like in just about all areas of your life?
Presence kind of keeps me in check.
It does, for sure, right?
When I'm not being present, I kind of get agitated. I can tell that, if I'm maybe thinking about things that I need to do. Or
we're hearing noises. I don't know if it's our daughter rumbling around up there or something.
Speaking of.
Yeah.
But like if I'm maybe, thinking about the emails that I need to return or responses or things, but Delia is asking me questions, I feel this sort of agitation that happens. So I know that I can't.
If you're not being present.
Yes. I can't be present with both things at once. To me, I have to either say, you know what, sweet girl, I need to take care of this. And then in 5 minutes, I'll, but I can't, be like this and with her, because it just, so I absolutely have to be present. Yeah, and I like that, and I think that's always sort of what I've really admired about you is this kind of a non-attachment, really, to any sort of a belief system. I think you just have this. You have a, and we're going to talk about your sort of where you've gone, places in your life, and sort of how you look at the world and stuff. But like, it really comes out the way you live, that you're just you want to be in the flow. You feel at your best when you're in the flow and you're connected. Oh, it's stressful when I'm not in the flow. So it's kind of trained me. I can't, Well, you do it well. So anyway, cool. So that's a good introduction. I wanted to talk, actually, for sure. I'm glad you mentioned with the neon signs. And I'm pretty sure these go back fairly far. Maybe your teens or 20s when you were paying attention to these neon signs and
you can explain what that's all about. But I think that like that it epitomizes presence and being open and being a yes person, because you talk about your trajectory, just your jobs, right? Those don't define you as a person, but going from, you've had many different jobs when you were younger, working in a bakery and that type of thing, and really and working in restaurants, but, going and getting training as a massage therapist, as a nurse, and even in the field of nursing, working in a bunch of different places, and in situations where you didn't think you would find yourself, and actually enjoying your work. And then coming away from that, continuing education in nursing, but then becoming a mom, and then becoming like a kid's yoga teacher, which you're really good at, you know what I mean? And a parent and all this, and it's like, that is not a normal like trajectory. And maybe it is a normal thing, because I know like I bounced around a lot in my life and stuff, but you've really seemed to handle it with a lot of like just grace and just acceptance. And I don't get that there's like a lot of judgment of yourself, of like going and doing these different things in life, that like, oh, I'm not sticking with this, I'm just changing directions. And I think that's where a place where I would come from. You know what I mean? But I don't know, I'm curious about like kind of that path, and I want to hear a little bit about like the neon signs and stuff, because I think that when early on in our relationship, I remember you telling me about that. And it's always been very fascinating for me.
Well, I think the first time I remember consciously seeing something and thinking, oh, yes, I think I'm going to do that. I don't know if it happened before, but the one that stands out was in high school, and high school was rough. I had a hard time in high school. A lot of people did. But there was a sign at my high school. It was advertising for studying abroad. And I looked at it and I just thought, yes, I would like to do that.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Let me get out of this high school and go try a different experience. And it was very enriching, very fun. I have lifelong friends from it. And I think that that's kind of how it would happen. I would just see something and sort of try it on. Like, all the way up to the kids yoga teaching. Man, when Linda, my instructor, the owner of the studio that I work mostly through, when she brought it up and she said, oh, I really think this would be good for you. I'm doing a kids yoga teacher training. And I remember laughing and thinking, what? Me, a kids yoga teacher? Kids? Really? And at first I thought, no way. And I think one of our friends, who's also a yoga teacher, kids yoga teacher, she, within a day of that, had said something to the same effect. Hey, I think you'd be good at kids yoga teaching. And that came way out of left field to me from her. I thought, really? Okay.
Like it wasn't a conversation that had been ongoing or anything like that.
No, not at all. And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe this is one of those moments. This actually, when I think about our life, and at the time our daughter was 2, almost 3, and I thought, gosh, like what a beautiful enrichment for both of us, that she would be able to come to my classes. It would be flexible. It would be, I think, very much aligned with the things that I want to teach her, the things that I want to practice. So, gosh, it just became, well, yes, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to be a kids yoga teacher.
So let me ask you really quick, because just to like kind of clarify, like you're talking about that experience in high school, and there literally is like a sign that you see, or like a poster. But when we say neon signs, maybe clarify that statement a little bit, because obviously with this, there wasn't a sign that was happening.
Sure.
So I wonder if you could clarify the neon sign thing, and then also when you say trying it on.
So neon signs is just figurative to me. That could be, like I mentioned, I became a nurse not because I had any idea what being a nurse is. Oh my gosh, that is hats off to the nurses out there. There's no joke. But I became a nurse because at the time I was waiting tables, and I was driving down the street listening to NPR, and there was a nurse on the radio, and she was talking about all the benefits of nursing, about the flexibility and the travel options and the security. All those are beautiful, wonderful things, and things that I craved at the time. And I was on my way to the beach to go surfing, and I go surfing and I meet a guy who's still a friend now. We ended up graduating nursing school together, and he at the time was an EMT, and he was working on his prereqs for nursing. And I think there was a third thing that happened, but I went and looked at the credits I had at the college, and I had all but I think 2 classes done already, checked off. I'd already taken anatomy and all these things just out of interest. And so I became a nurse because of that. And so those to me were the neon signs. The woman on NPR, the nurse on NPR talking about those things. So then, meeting Tony in the water and looking at, how it fits, and then trying it on and saying, oh, what would that be like? The trying on is kind of, how does that feel?
And are you thinking of like putting in yourself in the place of being a nurse, like you've already gone through the school? Or when you say trying it on, you're like, okay, what is this actually going to feel like to make this commitment right now and do this? Or like, how does that sort of...
No, it doesn't go that far. I think it's more feeling it. How does it feel? Does it feel aligned? Does it feel uncomfortable? If it feels uncomfortable and like I'm forcing it, it's not going to happen. But when it just seems to fit, when I look at it and say, oh, well, I have almost all the prerequisites done, and I already have a friend who's going to this program, he can help guide me, and it's got all these things that I need and crave in life at this moment. Hey, maybe this is the universe handing just the thing I need to me at the right time.
Gotcha. And so I think it's cool about the whole neon sign thing too, is that like, it's not like you had planned to go surf with Tony, your friend, and
I met him that day.
You met him that day,
the day that I met him.
Still friends with him.
Yeah.
And it's not, and if maybe you hadn't gotten in the car at that exact time, you wouldn't have heard that broadcast.
Right.
And if you hadn't done all those things, your schooling beforehand, those pieces wouldn't have been in place. So I think it's kind of amazing about that does make it like this neon sign moment. I think a neon sign is so perfect because it's a neon sign. It's just like, it's just like,
not see it.
It's like in your face. Even it's like flickering, right? That almost gets your attention more. Like if there's something missing, like, you know what I mean? But like, it's not perfect. But like, it's almost like those things come together so perfectly that, it seems like, how could I not do this? And so when you say like, I know for me, that's been a really big kind of question me, is that feeling part of it?
Absolutely.
Right? Because, I've always been someone who is maybe looking for ways to have more fun, or like, like if something feels good to me, it's because I'm going to go on like an adventure and I'm going to have fun or something like that. You know what I mean? So like, I confuse that where like, if I'm going to take a new career path or something, for me, there is going to be an element of like a little bit of fear or like uncertainty or discomfort of like thinking of going in this other direction. And I know that tends to kind of get in the way with me a little bit, because it's like, is that telling me that there's some stressful parts about this? Or am I, that feeling like thing? I mean, is that something like, I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, because that feeling it is really, that's always been a difficult thing for me to get like a hold of. You know what I mean?
I think that once I click in that this is what I'm doing, I don't really have that stuff, those stressors, those things, because it all kind of makes sense, and I just chip away at whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that I did well in nursing school. I struggled through nursing school.
Right.
I'm surprised I made it.
It's like you're like the whole time it's like this dream like montage.
That.
Like
It's not that. Things can be hard. Things can be challenging. That's a little.
It's challenging. I mean, I think the reason I bring that up is because I'm finding more and more the need to feel if something's right, you know, and I think that like everything's going to have some sort of fear and uncertainty with it. And so it's like how to sort of...
Those are two separate things though, fear and uncertainty, because everything's uncertain, but you can either have the fear or the faith with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just going to point out, because I live with you.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know your ways.
You do know my ways.
And I will say that when you are doing this, when you are doing the podcast, or you are working on designing a new product for our company, I don't, and maybe, you know, I'm pretty sensitive to you. I don't perceive that you have that fear and anxiety that you're talking about. I feel like it's when you start stressing about the future and like having fear with the uncertainty.
With the uncertainty, because there's uncertainty in either case.
Of course,
right?
And we all have uncertainty. Everything is uncertain.
Well, in either perspective, I guess you could say it's the same. It's the same situation.
It's just depends on what perspective you're taking. And I will say that when you have switched to the fear-based side of, okay, well, I'm just going to get a job. I'm going to go and work, you know, 8 to 6 or whatever it is, and just do it and get that security, which is such the illusion.
It is an illusion.
Talked about. Yep. That is when you are your most stressed.
And one thing I'll say to that, it's interesting you bring that up.
Most fearful.
And I know that when she's saying that, like, if I'm working on a project that I'm really passionate about, I'm not even thinking about the uncertainty. And there might be there's the uncertainty actually maybe holds a lot of excitement for me. You know, there is a question, obviously, of where this is going to go. Am I going to be able to sustain this? But as soon as I can go down that road, I start getting out of presence with it, and it's not as fun anymore. But the quality of the work I do, that excitement, that energy, is a totally different energy. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I'm not really thinking about it. I think it's when I vacillate between like. And it's purely like a thinking thing. It's like a very like left brain, like analytical, like pros and cons. Which one's better? Which, you know, like, is this one more negative or this one more negative or whatever? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's when it really I can see when you say that there's like the balance is really more on like that analytical side, you know, and not like the being. And just,
but it feels so good to be on the
other side. It feels so good, you know. I think that, but you know, I mean, this is interesting too because we've really come from, you know, 2 completely different backgrounds, you know, and you have a lot of experience in just kind of trusting and believing, you know, like living on faith, kind of in like lots of situations. I feel like for whatever reason, like. I don't know if that comes naturally to you or what. I mean...
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, nature, nurture, I don't know. I mean, there were a lot of disruptive things that happened growing up, but what I always held to is that I've always been taken care of. Yeah. I've never... You know, I've always been taken care of, even when things have gotten really rough.
Yes.
You know, they work out.
And I think that's a really important thing to remember. And we talk about this sometimes. Like when I start freaking out, I know that like I can look around me and realize that I'm 36 years old, 36. So I have to like check her for my age. It's like, you know, I'm still here and I'm doing pretty darn well. You know what I mean? So like, wow, I've been taken care of this whole time. And that's such an interesting thought to like become conscious of. And it's so easy to maybe explain that away or start having, but it's like, no, actually the reality is I have been taken care of this whole time. And other people have had a hand in that. Maybe there's been circumstances that I feel were like totally serendipitous or whatever. But the point is, those things have happened to keep me around. You know what I mean? And I still find them happening. Okay, I don't want to get too far off track. Was there, you know, did you is there anything else you want to say about like the neon signs or other ways that those sort of manifest for you?
No, I just pay attention and see how things feel. And I just say yes a lot. And sometimes that's not like, 3 different people or things saying something. Sometimes it's just, oh, that sounds interesting, and that's an opportunity to try something different.
Yeah.
And that feels good.
And maybe it just triggers like some sort of like curiosity in you or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of brought spice into life.
Yeah.
By saying yes.
Yeah.
And convincing you to say yes too.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I've probably not been a huge yes person. Well, it was very dependent. I think the yes was very dependent on, did this thing that I was potentially saying yes to or no to, did that fit into my sense of identity? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, explain that.
Oh, okay. So like, that I have really struggled like with identity a lot, right? I mean, I grew up in the South Bay of Los Angeles. It's a very like, the culture is very predominantly like surf culture, skate culture, like punk rock. And I loved that growing up. I mean, I was very much a part of that. And it still has that kind of lifestyle still has a place in my heart. But what I found is when other interests of mine would sort of come up against that and maybe would mean that I'm not going surfing or whatever, you know what I mean? That was a big one for me, like surfing. If I'm not going surfing, I'm not hardcore enough or whatever. Like, how can I even call myself that? That's not even my people or whatever, like. And so I think that if someone were to come up, and looking back in hindsight, I think I've had regret around things like this, where like if someone were to present a situation or an opportunity to me and it didn't fit my identity, right? Or how the identity I was attached to. If it didn't fit with like this, no, I'm a surfer. I'm a skater. This is my town type. There's like a lot of like town pride where we're from. And like, if it didn't fit that, I would just kind of dismiss it very quickly, even if it meant a potentially really amazing adventure. And who knows where those roads would have taken me. But I think I wasn't really thinking about the implications of that, until like you come along and we start talking about that. And I start seeing kind of how you live, and you've been on amazing adventures that have just been the natural progression of you saying yes to things. And so I think I was very open to it. I just needed to sort of get myself into a different place and kind of, mature in my own way,
The part that I want to kind of pull together from what you were just talking about.
Thank you.
Is, something that I remember talking about, because we talked about this a very long time ago, with that culture that we both grew up in, and how in that culture, the idea with like surfing and skating is that if you're not, there's a freedom, like this image of freedom. Guy's just taking off whenever he wants to go surfing, going skating and doing stuff. This is ideal. The image is of freedom.
Yes.
And I think what we came to back then is that it is so limiting because you aren't free. If an opportunity came that was something different, that maybe the buddies in your head say, dude, that's not cool or whatever, then you are tethered by that image. Yeah. And you're cutting yourself off to the freedom of, yes, I absolutely want to do that. That sounds rad. Right. That's true. That's another part of me that I would like to experience. So I just, I hope I was clear about that.
No, you are. You're very, very, very clear. I think that it makes me think of people like Nelson Mandela. I forget who I was talking about, like Nelson Mandela the other day. The guy's in prison for like, 20 something years, maybe even longer. I forget the exact amount. And came out, like he experienced so much inner freedom, even though physically, obviously he's in prison and in a country where, people that looked like him, just looked like him, that he looked like, were being imprisoned and had many of their rights taken away. Mm-hmm. And so, it makes me think about that like we really do create our own cages around us, and many times that is under this like guise of being free, but it really just becomes this a pretty substantial attachment. You know what I mean? That like really has got you. Mm-hmm. And to deviate from that
Absolutely.
is like you can't. It's weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
it's very controlling.
It's very controlling. There's like not. I think, if I were to think about that, there's a lot of fear that I would lose my community that I have, like that people are gonna like
be
judge me or not be my friends. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then also this kind of, it's weird, right? I can really go into it, and it becomes this deeper question of like, who am I? Mm-hmm. Because if, for me, like if I'm in that culture for as long as I am, it's like, I really don't know who I am. Mm-hmm. And there's something I think that should be really exciting about that. But it was, I think, like, I saw that as a very scary thing almost. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting.
That would be.
One thing I think that does fit into this, and another thing we've been talking about, are banner phrases. Mm-hmm. And I think that fits in with this type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe you could sort of talk about, like, just introduce what do I mean by banner phrases?
Banner phrases and the stories. So these are things that I've been thinking about for the last few years. It's just kind of been budding in my mind. Yeah. I've noticed that I tell myself stories in my mind. Things like a story might be if I'm running late for something and it's the very first time I'm supposed to be there, and mm-hmm. I don't want to make a bad impression or something. I might say something like, gosh, this always happens to me. Oh my gosh, I can't find my keys, or whatever. Yeah. I left my bag, and that's a true story. I left my bag of all of my tricks, and just minutes before I was being there pulling up and realizing, I don't have my bag. And I remember, this is an example. I remember driving home to get my bag. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the first things that I said was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. This always happens. And I was seething. And then I realized, gosh, that is a really sad story. And it really fires me up even more. It makes me even more angry when I tell myself that story.
So what would be the banner phrase?
Well, in this case, I feel like banner phrases and stories are kind of related, but I'll start with the stories because banner phrases tell a story.
It's like a summarized,
it's like a summary of and it has punch and it has spin. But with the story spins the situation in a certain way, and oh my gosh, it just makes things worse. Well, it can make things better.
I want to talk,
and that's kind of what I've been exploring is. So in the car, what happened that day was I'm driving and I have Delia in the back seat, and it's my first time teaching at the studio, and this always happens to me, and then I'm gonna breathe, and then I try to think, okay, I'm gonna be there right when I'm supposed to be there. Yes, I'm telling myself a different story, and I'm forcing it because that's the tool. That's one of the tools that I've been trying to learn is with being late, actually, you're going to get there when you're going to get there, and you're going to get there right when you're supposed to. And whatever happens from there, that's just what's supposed to be. It can't be anything else. I remember that day, after that, I called, the owner of the studio, and I explained to her. She thanked me for calling her and letting her know. I get there, there's nobody there. Yeah. For my class yet. Right. And, the class ended up beginning naturally 5 minutes late. Wow. Right when I got there, a few minutes later is when, students came in. And that's just an example of at first my story was just enraging. It made me bubble, and I was just feeling so much anger, and I felt more anger because of the story I was telling myself. Yeah. And then by painstakingly telling myself a different story, it shifted things for me. And I just was like, no, I'm just going to be present. I'm going to drive safely.
Yeah. And you show up probably with a lot better energy coming off of you. And
I got there and was, I did my best. And it was a great class, and by being present in that class, it was
right. You're not carrying the weight of that worry and all that. It's interesting as you're saying that, like I'm thinking about, okay, well that's like a negative kind of banner phrase, right? Like, let's just say like, I'm always late, right?
Yes.
Or I'm never on time for something. And I was thinking about this is like, okay, well, this is something I had talked about in the last podcast with Lizzie. We're talking about this like pivoting thing, right? So if like I'm like having like a negative experience, just to change one aspect of it. I'm always running late, but at least I get there safely, right? Or something like that, right? Now it's interesting because you're talking about banner phrases, and I think you said this, but like there could be positive ones as well. And when I'm actually thinking about this is like, okay, because we've talked about this, like if I'm running late, hey, maybe there's a reason I'm running late. Like maybe I avoided like a car accident or something like that. And that could be true. But what I don't like about that is not necessarily I'm avoiding disaster. It's still not a very empowered way to be. It's like, okay, well, something happened to me that maybe helped protect me. But it's still, that's better than being all angry and upset and have like filled with anxiety. And it's like, I like the way that you took that, because it's like actually an more empowered banner phrase to have, is that I'm going to get there right when I'm supposed to get there. And it's going to be what it's very direct. It's very direct. And the reason I bring that up is because we do this all the time now. I remember this, it started with like finding parking spaces. You know what I mean? And like, I always got stressed out going somewhere, like we got to get, like us being somewhere earlier at like a place that's open all day is going to help us get a parking spot. It's kind of a ridiculous thought. You know what I mean? It's kind of ridiculous. But like me, I'm like, we got to get out. And like in my mind, like partly what's going on is like, we got to get a parking space. And we're going to be driving around forever looking for a parking space. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's so funny. Like we kind of like, we're driving somewhere. I swear this happens, I would say 95% of the time, like this works out.
Yeah.
If not almost all the time. It's like, finding a parking space. And it's like, oh no, we got like our parking angels. And the right space. And seriously, we'll find a parking space every time. Now, that's kind of one example. But the other example too is like when you get there, if I'm going to be there exactly when I'm supposed to be there. You are coming into that knowing that you are divinely timed. You are like in tune, in touch, and you're going somewhere where other people are going to be interacting with you as well. They're coming from their various journeys and inner trips and all that kind of stuff. And for you to say, it doesn't matter what's going on right now, I'm going to be there and it's going to be the perfect timing. Now you're like set for that. Whether you're consciously doing that or not, it's like you're set for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what kind of, are there like positive banner phrases that you use?
Oh man, I think that they're more just on the spot, like, things. But I don't think we've really talked very much about the banner phrases specifically. And the banner phrases are kind of like a shortened version of the story.
Can you think of any that I've used? Maybe
we should write them down.
I probably use a lot of banner phrases.
I'm doing my best.
Oh yeah, I'm doing my best.
Yes, this is
when I'm having a hard time usually, right? It's like,
banner phrase. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
And
she usually just laughs at me when I say that. Maybe.
I'm
gonna have a cookie right now.
Yes, have a cookie.
Okay.
So I feel like banner phrases to me are things that I swear when banner phrases are used really effectively, I feel like there is no disputing that statement. And I feel like the media is really good at that, phrases, that like they spin things a certain way and they say things a certain way that there is no way that anybody in their right mind would ever think anything differently. And then if you just happen to be one of the people who thinks differently, it strikes this painful place inside.
That you're like being ridiculous or something.
That you're being stupid for having a brain and making your own decisions and having a different perspective. So I think, so there are the stories that we tell ourselves, but then there are these banner phrases that have so much energy to them. So like, just things that I'm exploring.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because like that one, like just take that one for example. You know, I mean, there's so many banner phrases, but I'm doing my best, right? Somebody listening to this might be like, well, what's so wrong with that?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with saying that, but I notice that when you say it, it really fuels your argument and your justification for your negative feelings.
Right. For my like anxiety or me like being frustrated that I'm not being taken the right way or that I messed up or something.
It basically says, I'm doing so much and I am working so hard, but look at this outcome and it's
I'm just doing my best.
Right. I'm just doing my best. And there's no disputing it.
Right. Because I am.
On my end, it kind of stops me from talking because, well, like, okay, I see you're doing your best. But really, are you?
Right. And I think that's that's
your best? To say that it's your best. Right. Really, what your best would to be possibly to tell yourself a different story.
Well, no, I think that what that does is it becomes and I can, if I'm being honest about it, when I say that, this probably will get me in trouble the next time I say it. But it's like
real husband-wife
I know. It's like what I'm trying to think about is that like if I say I'm doing my best, I've sort of stopped at that point, right? Absolutely. I'm not really trying anymore. Like right now, like, no, I'm doing my best. This is as good as it's going to get right here.
Yeah.
And so when you say like, are you doing it? At that point, no, like I probably could be doing a lot better because if I'm looking at really how I want to show up in this world and it's being compassionate and flowing and loving and present.
And including for yourself.
For myself as well. And, you know, that comes with a whole host of things. That means being kind to myself. That means being present when there is anxiety or frustration within me that might have driven me to that point of getting there, you know, of getting that frustration and then maybe a little conflict between us. I'm just doing my best, right? Like if I'm truly being present with like what's going on inside of me and the fears that are happening, it's mostly going to be internal, I'd say. Yeah, that if I'm truly being present with that stuff, then I'd be cool. I'd be flowing. I'd feel okay. Right? So am I doing my best? If that's my intention is to be fully present and all that and have joy in my life because I believe it comes from that presence. Well, no, I'm not really doing my best right now, am I? But me saying it gives me this little like, yeah, you are. You know what I mean? It's
kind of fuels.
Yeah, maybe it's like an ego stroke kind of thing or something like that. You know? It's interesting. I know. I'm like thinking about that because I think we can I think my mind is going now about like all the banner phrases that I do use.
Do you have any more that you want to
share?
No,
well, actually, there's one I do want to share. And this is cool because I'm thinking about positive banner phrases because I think either way, they're empowering, right? Because our words are so powerful. I mean, that's like proven to us. I don't care. Like our words are powerful. Where I mean, I was again talking, I think it was with Lizzie in the podcast on this, and like we're talking about, she was talking about, you know, writing down her prayers. And what was cool about that, and we got about, is that like, you know, when you're in your head and you're just thinking about something, you have all these different voices going on. It's like you're rehashing it. It's all these different perspectives happening. But as soon as that comes out and is expressed, there's one perspective being expressed. You can't have two different things being said at the same time, right? And so I think it really it's like collapsing like what is. Like there's this potential of ways I could go. But as soon as I say something, it's like all those potentials are just like, whoop, here's what I'm doing.
Yes.
Here's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely.
Right? So I remember this time where, I mean, who hasn't lost their keys? You know what I mean? And it's like one of the most frustrating things, right? And we all know how that feels. And you're just like, where are they? And you're looking for them, you know, forever, it seems like. And if it happens a couple times in like a week or something, it's like, this is always happening to me. Banner phrase.
Story.
It's a story, right? And the banner phrases could be just, at certain times.
I feel like there's a lot more spin with banner phrases.
Right. Well, because you can't get deep with them. It's like a political thing. It's like vilifying a whole group of people by just looking at one little maybe thing that like their religion has in it or something. You know what I mean? Like it's trying to simplify something beyond what it should be simplified, and then it just, whatever. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So, okay, but I'm thinking of this positive one where I was walking, this was a long time ago, and I know I've told you this story, but it was a great reminder for me as I'm walking my dogs in Hermosa Beach. They had like this green belt. It's this long path that just goes for miles, and there's ice plant and like ivy growing up on the sides of it, lots of trees and that type of thing. And I'm walking, and I would go on these long walks, and there's this woman who was just bawling her eyes out, and there's like a guy with her, like, and they're like, she's like in the ice plant sitting there, and they're obviously looking for something, and she's got all these dogs with her, and it turns out she's a dog walker, she lost her entire like wad of keys, like 30 keys for all of her clients and these dogs. That'd be extremely stressful, and I could feel it on her. And I walked by, and they both asked her like, have you look for our keys, we've lost our keys. And I'm like, oh man. And I walked away, and I said, well, no, I'll keep my eye out for them. And I remember though, like I was really this was a while ago, and I was really trying to explore like creating, you know what I mean? And like miracles and that type of thing. And like, I remember walking away, and there's this part of me that was like, well, when do you ever find somebody's keys? Like they've obviously been looking for it. Like, how are you going to find it? But then I put this banner phrase in there. I was like, you know what? I'm really good at making things happen. And I'm going to find her keys. I decided that like maybe it's like a very temporary banner phrase, but I would say that was a banner phrase. I was like, I was so sure of myself. I don't know what it was. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to find her keys. And I just put it in there, and I remember I said it to myself a couple times so it would sort of stick, and just like I felt it. I was like, yeah, okay. Went on this long walk, came back, long walk. I mean, they're still sitting there. And I wasn't thinking about it that entire walk. And I was like, oh shoot, I wasn't looking for her keys. Oh man, what did I do? And I was like sort of bummed that like I'd left myself down too. And like I'm like, oh man, like I wanted to have some integrity. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna find your keys. And I'm like, oh man, I walked by, I'm like, sorry, I didn't see your keys. Obviously I wasn't looking for them, But I walked right by them, and literally 20 feet down the path, if that, I look into the ice plant, and I just looked, zoop, and there was just the wad of keys sitting there. And bringing it to them, and I was like, man, that felt great, you know what I mean? But it was like, what that made me think about is kind of like when you're running late for somebody, you use like an empowering banner phrase, like I'm gonna get there right when I need to. It was that, but a lot more focused. And the same thing with like the parking spaces, right? And so I'm wondering if we, I'll say we, but just talking about myself, if I were able to live my life really recognizing those statements that I use a lot. I think that's what a banner phrase is. It's basically a statement that you use a lot to describe your life or your experience in this life.
I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
That would be one of them. Go ahead.
That I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Like wherever you are right then, that's where you're supposed to be.
And that's a banner phrase. That's a banner phrase. Yeah. And that's a very comforting banner phrase. Right? But I'm wondering like no, it's fine. If I was able to recognize those common statements and look at it and say, oh, that's a negative banner phrase right there. And what if I were able to make that switch, and so that my life is basically live in conversations, which happens more and more when we talk, because I really dig your perspective, and like I like that, you know what I mean? And you've taught me a lot of how to kind of look at those statements that I make. And it's like, wow, if I could be just having these positive banner phrases, looking at the power that these things have, how would my life be different? And I think especially when there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know, we have a lot of uncertainty in our life right now, and like I feel like that's just like a blank canvas.
Like overt.
It's really like there's a lot of uncertainty.
There's always uncertainty, but this is like overt.
It's really testing us. I think that's why like this is a very, I like that we're talking about this right now. This is a very like, I think what uncertainty does is it kind of takes a little bit of the paint off the canvas, right? Things aren't as clear the direction that they're going in. And if I think about it that way, and sorry, I'm just sort of going off here, like following a little trail in my mind that like, if I'm thinking of this life experience as my canvas, right? And my words, my actions, the way I'm showing up is the paint that I'm laying down, or the media, whatever I'm putting on there, you know? Like, I want to make that art, that piece, the best that it can be. And I don't know, anytime I do art, like I have to let go. I really have to let go. If I'm forcing it, it doesn't really turn out. And it's probably because I don't have a lot of skills in that field, but it's like, I know that if I am intending to make something beautiful and I can get myself out of the way and just hold that intent, I'm going to be pretty happy with the outcome.
It's like playing pool.
It's like playing pool.
It's like playing, my dad uses this. I think my dad and my brother, they use these examples of playing pool and also throwing a piece of crumpled up trash from a certain distance into a trash can.
Oh yeah.
It's just, you just got like,
anytime I've ever tried
that like pure, like no doubt, just pure intent.
anytime I've ever tried to claim that I'm going to sink a wad of paper in the trash can, I miss every single time.
It's very entertaining though.
Oh, totally. But if I'm like this, if I'm like, whoosh, it'll just sink, and I'm like, and of course nobody's watching, you know what I mean? But okay, so then pool.
Flipping eggs.
Flipping eggs is a good
You do
one.
it when we're watching.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm pretty good at it. Oh yeah, that's right. See if you do it next time.
Eggs in the pan, yeah, totally. What about playing pool? What do you mean about that one?
Oh, the same thing. It's
just like knowing that you're gonna,
just having that vision and just doing it. Thinking it.
There's this great scene in this movie. God, is it like City of Angels or something with Nicolas Cage and like Meg Ryan? Is that, and like she actually dies in the scene, which is probably not the best scene to use. It's like I think she knows that like Nicolas Cage is an angel or something. I don't know, but she's like, you know, she's like opening up to life. And there's a scene where she's riding her bike down this hill. You know, she's like bombing this hill on her bike, and I think she closes her eyes even, and she takes her hands off the handlebars and forget how that scene goes. Forget about that, but like, that's almost how it feels. And what it is, it's because, and the reason I use that is because if you've ever walked with your eyes closed, or even just taking your hands off the handlebars on a bike, or turned off your headlights when you're driving at night for a second, there's this really like powerful and kind of like, like feeling that you have to be very connected. And it's very powerful and very exciting and scary and it's life. It really is like life encapsulated, because you are just out there. There's mystery in this exact moment. This could go anywhere. I don't even know what's coming. You know what I mean? And it's this free fall kind of feeling. And so I think embracing that free fall and maybe trying to guide it with these banners, these stories, right? Like consciously guide it, right? Like I could be a skydiver just falling to the earth, or I could be one of those guys in like a wingsuit, or girls in a wingsuit that's like cruising along mountains, but I'm doing the same thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Sorry, I feel like I'm going off on different tangents. Anyway, is there anything else you want to say about banner phrases or the neon signs, or?
Was there a? Did we want to talk at all about the one about the story about I'm too old to change, or I'm set in my ways?
Let me look it up here. Yeah, so this is a banner phrase I heard. Actually, I wrote this, but they were talking about this on a different podcast. And it said, you know, basically what they were talking about, I thought this was a great banner phrase, is once you get to a certain age, you can't change. But you get set in your ways, or I
Yeah.
get set in my ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, for one, I feel like it's so limiting, and it's
Limiting.
and if I grasp onto that, it just feels very limiting. But I feel like it's opposite, because I feel like when I was young, younger, I guess. I'm 37, so I've lived some life, and hopefully I have a lot more to go. But I felt like when I was younger, I was much more stubborn and very attached to the way that I was at that time.
So you were actually pretty set in your ways.
I think so.
At least like
I
from
feel
a
like
mental...
I feel like I was very attached to certain things. It wasn't, I guess, beach lifestyle and things like that I was grasping onto as far as identity. But I feel like as I get older, I change. I'm more susceptible to change because I'm more open to it now.
Well, it's that you have that mentality of being open to it.
Yeah. And also because I feel like when you're younger, you go through, I think it's, pretty known and understandable that, your teens and 20s, early 20s and different times for different people. But there is that attachment to what you were talking about earlier about kind of the image and coming off a certain way. And the judgment, fear of the judgment and everything. And I feel like as I'm getting older, I see that and I have compassion for it, and I understand it because I was that too, but I just don't feel it like I used to. And it's freeing. And it allows me to be able to change. I feel like I've changed so much in the last 10 years.
Well, I think you're saying that it allows you to.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like when I think about this, I think there's a lot of societal pressure, maybe, that go along with this statement. And by that I mean, if I'm getting older, I should be kind of set in my ways, right? I should have an established career. I should sort of know my direction, right? And like going to school, that's maybe for younger people. I mean, I think that's kind of changing a little bit, I would hope. But I think too, I know for me, having to switch careers and that type of thing, like as I'm getting older, we've talked about this, there's definitely like this sense of like, I should already have this figured out. You know what I mean? It's cool to learn stuff, but man, I should already have this figured out.
Story.
Right. It's a story, right? Like, do I want to have this all figured out, or would that just be kind of boring?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a fear that comes in that the older I get, if I don't have it figured out, then I'm not going to be okay, and we're not going to be okay. So I think there's a lot of that societal conditioning that goes along with this, right? And I'm really curious, like, how that might be in other societies. Is that viewed differently? Because life should be about learning. And like, I know that if I've ever gone back to like take a class, like a college or something, and maybe I'm the oldest person in there by like 10 years or something, I'm one of the most engaged students in the class. And I've noticed that with like other older students in class. Like, I'm in a different place. I'm not worried about the social aspects of the other people in class. I'm like, I just want to learn. You know what I mean? And like, that is such an empowering feeling, and I feel that like we should be able to even learn more as we get older, just because of our life experience. And like we should. That banner phrase seems ridiculous, kind of.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like I wonder how much has shifted in the last 20 years just because of technology and information and access.
Well,
I feel like both of my parents have changed a lot in the last 20 years.
As have mine. Yeah.
So many shifts, and I think for the better, and much more open.
I think you're right about that. I think like with technology, you see the possibilities. Or you either see somebody else living a possibility that you're like, that looks kind of cool, or you're just exposed to something that like triggers something in your mind that like,
Sure.
I would want to do that. And then it seems easier to do it.
Yeah. Well, it infuses excitement into
Yeah.
life, and
Yeah.
you know.
And there's a lot of support too as well. So
Yeah.
anyway, gosh, I feel like, is there anything else you want to say?
About those, I think that was pretty
Pretty good. I know we sort of wandered a little bit on that, but you know, it was a great conversation, and I just really appreciated talking to you, and I hope to have more of these discussions. That was great.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a lifetime of
I hope
these
so.
discussions.
I hope so. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you too.
Okay.